Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of startAD Studio. I'm Tina. I'm Program Associate at startAD, and today I'm joined by Sean and Michael from Metaverse Architects. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and Metaverse Architects, and then we will begin.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tina. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I'm the co-founder of Metaverse Architects, which is one of the leading development firms in the metaverse. If you can think it, we can build it. And that's what we bring to the table on a daily basis as your one-stop shop for all your metaverse needs.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm the head of sales of Metaverse Architects. I lead the client acquisition front, along with helping Sean and Luca in a number of different facets to the business.
All right, cool. So I'm going to strip it right back and start at the basics. So both of you are entrepreneurs. And my question to you is, who in your life or what in your life has happened that inspired you to make that switch and become an entrepreneur?
This is interesting because I wasn't an entrepreneur before from my end. It fits Mike very well, but from my end, I was always in the public sector, a volunteer involved in youth organizations, and I spent the last 8 to 9 years of my life focused on politics, advocacy, trying to change things through the public sector. And one thing that motivated me to do that and remain the same for this company is that I had this desire to have an impact or to have a degree of change on the space around me. And one thing I slowly began to realize over time is that it's very difficult to do that in the public sector. It's extremely slow. Whereas I was very inspired by private sector leaders that were able to come up with innovative solutions to drive change in society in a way that benefits the economy, drives a profit, and also is done in a way in which they have the freedom to potentially achieve their vision or their goals with regards to what they want to change in the space around them without the bureaucracy, without all the headaches of the public sector. And so that's really where I was having a mindset shift, wanting to move away from politics and more towards the private sector and start working on social enterprises and different kinds of projects that can help people. And this is something we are trying to do in Metaverse Architects now. So today, just last week, we launched the first ever mental health clinic in the metaverse. It's something we're working on to try and give mental health provisions to people on the internet, to give them the space that they need to have access to healthcare, irrespective of where they come from, in the field, obviously, of mental health. We're also doing similar projects with organizations like Reporters Without Borders, for example, which is one of the leading organizations in the world when it comes to freedom of speech. And we're opening spaces to be able to facilitate dialogue and information between reporters and citizens. This is exciting because you can drive change in the space. Went a bit off topic there, Tina, but it's very
fascinating.
Very interesting, Sean. As in personally, I've always been very interested in business and doing different stuff. I feel I did struggle working for larger firms. I always felt like I was kind of wasting my time and selling my soul to the devil, if that makes sense. So always after work, after 5 p.m., I would see what I'm going to do. Be it an event company or a real estate company, which I both have and had. I felt that's looking at what's happening from a global level, by analyzing the problems in the current situation, crypto and the blockchain and decentralized organizations and DeFi are the solution to these current problems. And then I think it was inevitable that I would get into virtual real estate, considering I do have a real estate finance background and accountancy background, which led to me meeting Sean. And Luca is one of my ex-partners as well. So it was an instant click.
Fascinating. It's really cool. So you guys both being from such different fields before Metaverse Architects, how did you meet?
That's a great question. So Malta is a very small country, an extremely small country. Sean and I actually went to the same school, but Sean's 2 years younger than I am. We never really spoke that much. In the same year as my brother, but when we saw each other, we're like, now you see, this is how we're gonna meet. I remember him running in the playground, very tall guy, always running about, and that's my vision of Sean. Very, very, very smart, like computer stuff. So we spent 12 years together in the same school, but we never really clicked because of the age gap at that age, obviously.
Yeah.
Super interesting though that we got the same education, grew up in the same space, we weren't really that close, but then when we met, how long has it been now? 5 months, 6 months when we met at the start, when you joined. From my perspective, at least, Mike, it clicked immediately then. It's like everything fell into place. Interested in the same books. Mike was asking like all the right questions and piquing my interest, and it was never a dull day with Mike then. I think that plays a part as well in the chemistry of the team. All those subtle similarities that kind of fell into place what a solid half a decade later after we left that space is quite interesting.
Very interesting.
There has to be a lot of coincidences sometimes, which it's like that quote where you can't connect the dots looking forward, but then you can connect them looking back. And it's just interesting to see how all these like little subtle, once thought insignificant things come together to collectively create a collage of significance. And I think that's the case over here as well.
Yeah, it's all about the little things that get together and build the perfect chemistry within a team. Okay, so here's a question for you. So we know the journey that entrepreneurs take when they're building and growing a startup is a bumpy one, to say the least. So what I want to know is, what is the biggest mistake that you're glad you made?
I mean, from my end, just a year ago, related to crypto, I invested a substantial amount of money, which then was lost through what we call a rug pull. Now, that's being relatively naive, seeing short-term gains, and within a month, I had 10x my money. The next day, I lost everything. So that was a mistake, because that was you're being part of the community without understanding. And then from then on, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go really intensely to why the dynamics of crypto work. No more speculation, etc. And I think that was one mistake which I learned early, and now it made me learn so much that I'm part of the company.
From my end, it would be, interestingly enough, a very, very human lesson, I would say. It would be overvaluing other people's opinion and simultaneously undervaluing my own happiness. And that is, I wouldn't have had the courage to be able to start this company and take a leap of faith in what we're creating if I didn't learn the important lessons behind that almost lifelong mistake for me at this young age, something I had to learn from a year ago.
All right, so on that note, actually, so everybody knows that Metaverse Architects have basically stirred things up in the metaverse world, in the Web 3.0 development world. And you guys are considered an ambitious startup that kind of entered a new market successfully. So what would your advice be to another ambitious startup that wants to enter a new market? What advice would you give them to be able to ensure the best, most low risk way to do so?
Start,
bootstrap, keep fail fast, fail quick. Ensure your product is there. The MVP is there within 40 days. If the MVP is a success, then you have something to build on. That's what I think is important. And know your industry. I mean, you have to. Without Sean and I and Luca know the industry very well, but we know it from a macro perspective, as I explained before. So you have to make sure that you know the industry, especially considering it is in its infancy. The bit there is you need.
Just to build a little bit on what Michael said, I think that's extremely relevant, and I feel blessed that I have both Michael and Luca. You haven't had the chance to meet Luca that much, Tina,
I have not. No.
He's the co-founder and he's the bootstrapper. He's the one that can put a company together in 40 days with duct tape and make it work. Yeah. And the balance we have between me, Luca, and Michael is really good, because it's a really good mix between people who are researching, people who are constantly thinking, people that are coming up with creative solutions, and people who can just grab one of them and start and build it and experiment with it and try with it. And then by the time that bootstrapping period is over, it comes back to the same trio, and we tweak it and we assess it and we see how we can make it better. And we've had enough time to mull over the idea to come up with broader, more wide-changing solutions with regards to what that idea could be. So even if you're listening to this right now and you're a young person or whatever you might be, no ageism over here, but if you're someone that wants to start a new project in this space, Michael said it perfectly. Just go ahead and start bootstrap, and don't be afraid of forming a team, of bringing people on board that can balance your weaknesses and empower your strengths. Because at the end of the day, if you really want to make a company, build a project that's going to have an impact, you can't do it alone. So finding partners, finding fellow interested people that are capable of both helping you drive those ideas forward, but can also balance your strengths and weaknesses is incredibly empowering. And I would highly recommend you look for that.
Amazing. It all comes back to the everyday saying that we've been saying since we were kids, and there's no I in team. And that's pretty much the fundamentals of entrepreneurship, is putting the perfect team together and going from there. So 100%. All right. So how do you see your business as Metaverse Architects as being the one-stop shop, as you say, being able to transform the UAE?
Michael put it rightly that at the moment, the mountain is quite low. And one of the reasons for that is because we're dealing with an incredibly disruptive technology that can change a lot of things. And it's only at the start with regards to what impacts it can have. Mm-hmm. Again, and this is where I guess my answer won't be that specific, because I do believe metaverse-based technologies are going to be disrupting business systematically across the board, not just in the UAE, but globally. And the reasons for that is because it is not, it doesn't geographically discriminate, just like the internet. It can change industries, markets, service provision globally, internationally, without having to worry about central authorities, geographical boundaries, or even a specific localized place of implementation. It's kind of like its own ecosystem, its own country, its own space, whatever you want to call it, your own virtual reality universe, or in the case of the Greek term, metaverse, an extension of an already existing universe. I think the best way to look at it, though, especially if you're listening to this and you're from the UAE and you want to know how this can potentially impact markets around you, the best way I feel you can describe this is akin to creating websites in the late 1990s and asking, how can this thing called the internet and the websites that exist on it potentially disrupt industries that already exist and have existed for such a long time? I mean, the general principle then was, but the internet is just used by young people or hackers on the internet, or these people in colleges. Like, how can it really change these massive industries and these global companies that have long established their own status quos? This, I think, is the same wave. The only distinction that we can drive from it is a website is a 2D interface, a 2D experience, and this is an extension now, an iteration of the internet where 2D experiences are becoming 3D immersive environments. And the limitations of being able to play around with that technology at the end of the day are up to us as consumers, as entrepreneurs, as businesses. Whatever solutions we think we can come up with in the space, again, our slogan, if you can think it, we can build it. That's why we're also a one-stop shop, because the needs in such a disruptive space are incredibly broad, because the systematic disruption that this kind of technology can have has a multi-dimensional approach. It's multifaceted. It's like a Rubik's Cube. There's so many different areas of industries and markets and different status quos that this technology is having a direct impact on. So again, if you're from the UAE and you're interested to find out how this technology might impact your industry, your market, your business, actually the answers to that question might start with you. Jump into the metaverse, have a look at what people are building. Most likely, all these different 3D solutions can be applied to your industry in one shape or form.
So actually, just to answer your question directly with what we can help out with the guys with UAE. I mean, from a cultural perspective, UAE are pioneers, right? They've been pioneers for the past 3-4 decades, architecturally, finance-wise, I think our ideas are aligned. We are considered to be relatively pioneers in the space. Therefore, should we do business in the UAE? Hopefully we'll do business in the UAE soon. When we meet these business leaders, there's that sense of alignment, and that innovation is key, regardless of if it's architectural or if it's virtual architecture.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So for everyone who may not know, Metaverse Architects went through the Scale Up 2 program, and they've both completed their pitches. So what I have to ask is, what was your experience like in Scale Up?
I mean, Scale Up, for me, being in multiple sessions was great. It was really great. And my peers, the colleagues we had were phenomenal. You were great, Tina. I mean, very helpful. All John, Paul, everyone was great. And it was very intense, but we really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
I have to echo Michael's sentiments here. We wouldn't have survived without you, Tina, for sure. And the reason for that is because it is challenging. It's exciting, it's challenging, and you're like, I'll be honest that I think both me and Michael came to the program not really knowing what to expect, being excited for it, having excitement also to potentially work with Aldar and Maf in the future. That was definitely what we're looking at. But I remember very starkly when we finished our first training call, and me and Michael just got on the phone, and after an hour and a half of our first training session, we were just like, wow, like this was really, really, really cool and really good. There are fantastic people over here. We're probably one of the smallest startups, to be honest, compared to everyone else. And that is exciting from the perspective of everyone is doing their own thing, and they're doing something that we did not expect whatsoever, bringing really cool solutions to the table, whether it's from search engine optimization or data mining or dealing with digital real estate. There were so many different kinds of solutions brought to the table that everyone was shining in their own right and in their own way. And then added on top of that, to the icing on the cake, is the fantastic trainers that just bring so much value to the table and can really nitpick let's say, little areas of your character and skill set that you can definitely refine. And as an entrepreneur, but also as a young person in this space, having that opportunity was phenomenal, because day to day, Michael has like 10 calls a day, usually just with clients focusing on sales. For my end, I run on till late in the night and working with multiple different time zones, trying to keep operations going. And having that little slot of time where you're taking a breather from the work and focusing a little bit on personal and professional development and exploring these things with some really good trainers is so enriching and so refreshing as well, because if you're a young person, and again, I keep saying a young person, sorry, it's a force of habit from the youth section.
Okay, Sean, you're young. Okay.
If you are interested in actually joining this program, I highly recommend it. I think it's going to teach you something without any form of doubt, irrespective of your background, your skill set, your expertise. There's something for you to learn in this space for sure. And again, through my experience, it is so refreshing having those few hours in the week that are dedicated to networking with fellow companies across the world doing something disruptive, networking and learning from fantastic trainers, was also then having the opportunity to do business with one of the most ambitious and exciting companies on the planet. So getting all those three elements together and mixing them up into one little cocktail is an experience worth having, and I highly doubt. I implore you to apply if you're interested, is what I'm trying to say.
Was so amazingly put. We're so glad that you guys enjoyed it, obviously. But honestly, at startAD, at the heart of it, it's always been what's best for the startups. Just we're so passionate about making sure that these startups basically incubating and accelerating you in all aspects, not just, okay, here you go make some money, but just refining the entrepreneurs at the heart of the operations. And we're so glad that you guys actually got to experience it from your side, which is quite cool. So you've now gone through Scale Up, and I'm sure that Mike and yourself have approached companies separately in hopes of partnerships. So was this sprint accelerator model helpful as opposed to going directly, reaching out to a company and saying, hey, we can work with you?
That's one thing I told Sean. I mean, I felt that I needed to improve my presentation skills coming into it, and I felt I got there. And through this program, definitely it is life learning skills which I'll take into the rest of my life and with multiple business partners. So.
Definitely. And what's interesting for us is that we don't really approach companies to work with them. Usually we get companies through our sales funnel, right, Mike? They come to us with a need already, and it's a bit easier to navigate. Whereas in this case, it was a really interesting exercise for us to go to a company with a pitch, with a proposal, and try and convince them. And right off the bat, like Tina, you experienced this firsthand. Our pitch went from, I would say, 0 instead of saying to 100 to, let's say, a good solid 85, 90. Like we really refined it over that week, and that was as a consequence of the training, the great advice, the direction and facilitation that you, Tina, and the rest of the team gave us throughout that experience. So the results are definitely there. What's interesting is that as soon as we finished like our final pitches and we went back to the week, I think now we just really started just approaching random companies without really thinking twice. Like the grants that we wrote, for example, this week, that was us approaching other people and just getting it done and refining the pitch and getting everything approved. So like he didn't just have an impact on our skill set, but he gave us a little bit of a mindset shift as well with regards to what we can do and how it acts and how to build these proposals.
I mean, if you can successfully do a pitch to Aldar and Maf, two of the biggest companies in the world, then the mindset for us to go for any other company has changed completely. So that was something I think Sean said very well.
So my last question is, what is the next exciting frontier for Metaverse Architects moving forward?
I mean, I think we need to work on the one-stop shop idea. We have a number of ideas. We have a number of potential spin-offs which we can do in the whole industry. So I think that's in the short-term plan to start up a few more of these small startups and take them into big ones, basically.
The macro sense, we're trying to make ourselves obsolete by developing our own software that can do our job even faster than anyone else. We're already some of the fastest and most effective people in the industry, I would say. Important to say, there's like a very broad industry, but we're thinking from the perspective of creating software to make ourselves obsolete, which to me is exciting because we're bootstrapping new ideas and new initiatives every 40 days. So we just launched Metaverse Events, which is a side silo company, and also metawearables.shop, which Metaverse Events is bringing every single event in the metaverse under one platform and then facilitating interoperable movement between multiple different metaverses from one utility-driven application. Metaverse Wearables at Store is a space in which you can buy NFTs, virtual wearable NFTs, with your credit card, your Visa, without actually having to have cryptocurrencies. So just directly purchasing stuff in fiat and being able to see them in augmented reality and knowing what the wearables look like, and they just get delivered right to your Decentraland account or in the future Sandbox account or whatnot. Mentioning these two because they're just two fun examples of how we're trying to create platforms and apps and systems to be able to make the metaverse more accessible and friendly that go beyond just the development process of metaverse-based experiences. There's definitely quite a few exciting things in the pipeline for the next year in that regard. We'll also be launching an education platform very soon if anyone would be interested. No, low-key, just plugging that in over here. We're launching the Metaverse Academy, which is a space in which we're going to be getting some of the brightest and most interesting minds in the metaverse right now and allowing young students, anyone who's interested, anyone who has the drive or is curious to find out more about the metaverse to be in that space with them and get a masterclass with regards to what's going on in the metaverse right now.
That's fascinating. Honestly, in a new disruptive space like Web 3.0 in the metaverse, the sky is honestly the limit. And to see you guys at the forefront of it is quite exciting. And we're really, really excited to watch your journey and see you in the UAE. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure to speak to you, and it was a pleasure to work with you over the last 4 weeks. We wish you the best of luck and onwards and upwards.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tina. Highly appreciate it.
Thanks, Tina. Wouldn't be here without you.